John, we got big, small problems that somebody needs to make disappear. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm very well. I'm detecting another prestidigitation analogy, basically because you told me to make a thumbnail with lots of famous magicians in it. What have you got in store for us? I don't even know.
Well, the more and more I look at the various events, whether it's current events, historic events, that we focus on cover-ups. We focus on, or at least I focus on cover-ups and black
Exposing
swan.
cover-ups.
Yes, not actually doing cover-ups. I haven't
Right.
actually had to cover anything up probably since high school.
Except your head.
Yes, in my head, and the retinas, yes. So exposing other people's cover-ups was probably better articulated. And we tend to focus on this show on these black swan events, these really unique things that take place that are kind of once-in-a-lifetime type events. And we focused first on the Las Vegas shooting, and then we got into this whole pandemic thing. And I don't think any of us, you, me, or anybody in the audience, expected that to last over 3 years. So focusing on these black swan events and the cover-ups of them. And now you're doing a new show with Shepard and Bellis every week, aren't you? Aren't you and Shep doing a show?
We are. People are loving it. It's been really cool, Shepard is bringing up all kinds of subjects that are many times outside my knowledge. And then, it's crazy because you experienced this with me. Shepard will bring something up and I'll say to myself, this is absolutely stupid. This has got to be wrong. And then I look into it and he's right. Today, the New York Post
The biggest
had a story about Dogman in Germany. And it's like, wait a minute now.
Yeah. And Shep was probably reporting it 3 years ago or met the guy.
Yes.
So yeah. So yeah, exactly. Look, that was my experience. We had Shep on the show. I think it was April 4th or April 5th of 2020, and at the time, the big story in the news, besides the damn pandemic thing, was they were recounting the votes from that election, and they were recounting the votes. I guess it was in Arizona, and it was at a stadium. And so because Shep and I had connected on that whole flight radar thing from Las Vegas, that's kind of the way that we connected. Right. I had prepared a whole bunch of flight radar stuff, looking at who was flying over the stadium as they were counting the votes. Shep comes on the show and says, guys, the National Guard is moving stuff all over the place.
But didn't he tell us Planet X is coming back? And I was like, wait a minute, what the hell are you talking about?
Well, so here's the thing. So he kind of put a bunch of stuff on the table. He said Planet X, which also some people call it Nibiru.
Right.
And some call it the Blue Kachina. So if you're from Hawaii.
But I thought that's the trail that follows it, the Blue Kachina.
Well, that's how it got its name. But the name of the object in some cultures is the Blue Kachina. Oh. And so the net of it is Shep comes on the show. And at the time, this Atlas Comet Atlas C19, was on its way into the solar system. And as it's entering the solar system, the tail of the thing is blue. And it's like, this is interesting, because Shep's been talking about the Planet X Nibiru Blue Kachina thing for some time. And along comes this comet. And not only is it blue, but once the guys at JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, once they figure out its ephemera, they figure out its trajectory, they realize that the last time it was here was about 4,000 years ago. And that's consistent with all the, the ancient history stuff. So it's fascinating. It's like he comes up with stuff. And then he tells us about the National Guard. And sure enough, President Trump, in an interview, I don't know if you remember this, but he does an interview with Maria Bartiromo outside the Oval Office. They have that little garden out there. And he's sitting out there with Maria Bartiromo doing an interview. And he says to her, this is the biggest call-up of the National Guard since D-Day.
And what was it supposed to be for? COVID?
To build the field hospitals.
Oh, right.
So we're building field hospitals. We got Jacob Javits, we got St. Louis, we got Chicago. It was every city. You name it. Name a city, we built a field hospital. And this was the National Guard and those other guys, the Army Corps of Engineers.
This is not it. I'm having a tough time finding that interview, but take you.
Yeah, I don't think you'll find it. I don't think you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the connection here, so to sort of, kind of tie all this stuff together, each one of these cover-ups, whether it's the Las Vegas shooting, whether it's what were the field hospitals really for, why did we put the airplanes away, which Shep, clearly got us all turned on to. Each one of these cover-ups is really using magic techniques.
Right.
So in other words, they're using the same. Absolutely. And so on previous shows, a couple of weeks ago, we showed everybody the America's Got Talent performance of a guy named Stephen Brundage, Brundage, Stephen Brundage. And he's one of the top Rubik's Cube practitioners in the world, and certainly one of the top 2 or 3 Rubik's Cube magicians in the world. And he does a performance on America's Got Talent that is just stunning. In fact, I think he comes in first or second place. And we broke that down with our patrons I think it was 2 weeks ago. And we broke down this performance and showed people how he did the things that he did.
He's got a submariner.
Step by step, right? We did it one little bit at a time and showed everybody how he did it. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it. Now, once you watch it, you're like, I know what he just did. Right. I know what he did here. In fact, I was almost thinking of doing a cold open in this show tonight using the gorilla illusion. For those of you who haven't seen it, look it up on YouTube. I was thinking we might do a cold open with that one night because there's always new viewers that haven't seen our show before. That this is always the first time they're seeing us and they're wondering what the hell are these guys up to. And the gorilla illusion is also sort of, this is a staple of magic, right? So what you're not looking for, you aren't going to see. And this is why you hear frequently.
I seem to remember they get pissed off when you show that gorilla illusion, don't they?
Yeah. Who gets pissed off? Who does?
Whoever put this video out, I think, gets pissed off.
No. Nobody got angry at me. No, the only person who ever got angry at me was John Cullen's granddaughter asked me to stop using the photo.
That's not the only person that ever got angry at you.
Well, maybe I mean, legitimately, for a legitimate reason. Yeah, I mean, she was like, look, that's my grandpa. Please stop using the photo of him. I was like, all right, Jason's the one who found it. It's his fault.
Did I find that?
Yeah, because I wasn't on camera. So you put up a thing of the old real John Cullen guy as like a avatar of me. And she got upset because it's her grandpa.
And
so
we honor that because she got upset. The truth of the matter is, I think that's a public domain photo that you could use, but we don't want to upset anybody. So
yeah, out of respect for her, again, I do it as a tribute, and out of respect for her, I stopped using that photo and I put the sheriff badge up there and all that stuff. So the net of this is, these cover-ups are using techniques, and what we're going to do is we're going to look at a couple of these big stories. We're going to look at Hawaii. We're going to look at different things. And I want to kind of show you guys kind of the way I look at things to break them down, because I'm looking at things a little bit differently because I see them differently. I look at the Las Vegas shooting differently. I looked at this whole COVID thing. In fact, I look at the COVID pandemic clearly in a Stephen Wright, we go by thickness type of manner, meaning I'm like the only guy looking at these numbers in the pandemic and wondering the kind of things I wonder. And all the big name people seem to ignore that stuff as if it's too uncomfortable to address. It's like, again, it feels like the emperor's got new clothes, right? And aren't they fabulous?
Find something behind this, John, because, I think this is why you and I have connected, because it's a similar approach that I took to 3D. I had one style of 3D camera that I was preferring, and everyone's like, no, you can't use that, it's too limited. And as I got more advanced in my productions, I started to see what they were talking about, the limitations. But the alternate style of camera had such a terrible visual artifact in it, I couldn't imagine using it. So what I set out to do was to cure that artifact, and I succeeded. Nobody else. They've been making 3D movies with this type of beam splitter optical camera for
and you're
decades.
like, don't you guys see this? Don't you see?
Horrible,
right, you're looking at like, right, you're looking at everybody else like, are you blind?
And then they adopted
not see
that.
these artifacts? Right.
My method has become the international standard of using these types of beam splitter cameras.
That's why you're famous.
Not really.
That's why you're rock star. That's why you're rock star. So let's go through the deck. Let's show the YouTube audience a couple things. So when we go to the patron only part of the show, I've got a whole bunch of video clips that we're going to share again. So we've got
and by the way,
9 video clips. Yeah.
Congratulations. You're tickling 20,000. Well, this one's even behind. You're at 19.9 on the actual live Twitter X, whatever it is.
Wow.
Congratulations.
That's exciting.
That is.
That's exciting. That's exciting. I think Elon Musk sends you a. No, never mind. He doesn't. No.
Yeah.
No, he doesn't.
Bologna sandwich in last week's newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, so let's go to the deck and let me kind of walk through some of these illusions, and we're going to talk through it. So, so that's Lance Burton. Yeah, so that's Lance Burton. This is the guy I went to magic camp with, the first Tannen's Magic Camp, 1977. He shows up with 15 doves and a tuxedo. And
how old was he?
I'm guessing he was probably 17. And
where did he get the doves?
That's what we all were like. There were other guys there with birds. So clearly there were like 10 or 12 guys who show up at Magic Camp with 8 or 10 doves. He shows up with 15 doves.
In a suitcase?
In cages. Yeah. Their parents get them there.
You getting on a plane with that?
Dude, I didn't have any doves, right? I had no doves, right? I had no animals in my act, right? I'm like, freaking birds.
So bring your own doves. BYOD.
Yeah, so he shows up at Magic Camp, and the guy is like, you could just tell, he's like a rock star of magic as a teenage kid, 16, 17 years old, and he's a rock star. And he's that good. And again, we had this big competition at the end of 2 weeks. We studied under Slidini. We studied under the best in the game. Oh, yeah, it was amazing. And at the end of the 2 weeks, you do this performance, and he's in his tuxedo and the whole thing, and he looks like, he looked like a god back then. The guy was gorgeous. And I think I came in second place or something like second or third place. And I think something like that. He wins. I came in second or third place, and there were 200 kids there.
Wow.
So that was pretty, and the
his
funny
show
thing,
is
so here's a funny
Vegas. They're giving him some other show somewhere, some other city.
He's a couple years older than me. He's old. Who the hell was I keep doing? At some point, it's like it's time to sit by the pool. So, but here's an interesting aspect to this, and sort of, it's weird now for me to look back on my life and see these things. When I was doing this magic thing and I did my performance, everybody else had an act. I did one effect.
Banter, you mean?
You know how I talk about I'm a one-trick pony, and you dragged me into this COVID thing kind of reluctantly, and I fell for it hook, line, and sinker, but I kind of was a one-trick pony, and now I'm a two-trick pony. And because of Shep, I'm kind of a 2.5-trick pony with the rocks, right? So, but when I was at Magic Camp, I only did one effect. And it was odd that I only did one effect. Like everybody else had like a whole, meaning a guy's got the candles, and then he's got the flowers, and then he produces doves, and then he makes this disappear, and then this changes into, they had an act. They had
but
4,
you were
5,
focused
6
on making the one thing perfect.
Right. And that's as a young man. I did one effect, and I just did it effectively and finished in the top 3 at a couple hundred kids. But this guy beating me, right? And that was okay for me. I was like, that's good enough. I don't need to be number 1. I'm okay with 2 or 3. That's fine. So you take the stuff when you study deception, you take these techniques and you apply it to the next slide in the deck. And we can talk about who these other magicians are. You got Penn and Teller. You got.
I love
a
it
whole
that
bunch
you've
of
got
famous
this there.
things.
I don't believe anything about this story.
All right, so let's talk about this for a minute. So, from a magician's perspective,
Right.
from my
Now you
perspective,
see him, now you don't.
okay, I'm looking at this. And so, first of all, to give everybody a little bit of time perspective here, we record these shows on a Friday. So it's Friday, August 25th in the United States right now. And the big news story in the last 24, 48 hours is that the head of the Wagner Group, his jet, crashed on the way from Moscow to St. Petersburg.
Yeah.
And he's dead. But right before the show, we had sort of a breaking news story that Moscow and the Kremlin says, we didn't do this.
Did they say that?
Yeah. So, from my perspective, I look at this and say, if he crashed his own jet, because one of the other reports that we're hearing is that the bodies they found in the jet didn't have heads on them. Yeah, but not just decapitated, not like, and the heads were up in first class and the bodies were
missing.
back
They were just
in economy. Yeah,
Gone.
right. It wasn't like we found them all up in the cockpit. There were no heads on the bodies.
It's a good point.
So now think,
because I suppose decapitation could occur as a side effect of a plane crash, but that's not what they said.
Right. It's not like, and all the heads were out in the field and we found the sheep, sniffing. That's not what happened. The bodies had no heads. Again, this is the report that I heard. So think about this from his perspective. You send the jet up. You've got a whole bunch of carcasses. You've got bodies with no heads because you don't want them to be identified because of the teeth.
That's a good point.
Right? So with no head, there's not going to be any teeth to do any identification in the
You also
crash.
can't look at the face. It's like, I think this is him.
Right. Hard to say, is this him or not? Right. Is who are you going to call in to identify, the body? And he disappears. He's gone. He's somewhere in paradise, and everybody thinks he's dead. And the beauty of it is, Vladimir Putin gets credit for killing him. And now Putin gets to deny it and say, I didn't kill the guy. And everybody's going, come on, get out of here. Of course you killed the guy. And Prigozhin is probably already in Bora Bora on the beach, and everybody's calling, he's got a new name already and a new girlfriend. And he's hanging out having Mai Tais on the beach in Bora Bora. And Putin gets credit for it and gets to deny it. It's if you're Prigozhin, it's genius if you did this. Now, he could be dead for all I know. The guy's a grease spot. No. But all right, so I think if I'm him, I crashed my own plane. I got out of there through and everybody's talking about how Putin killed me because I'm a bad. Everybody was expecting it to happen. It wasn't like that was a surprise after his mutiny thing. So everybody was kind of anticipating this. So he beats Putin to the punch. He crashes his own plane filled with carcasses. They got plenty of dead bodies out there to work with, right? No shortage of dead bodies to stick in a plane, put a seatbelt around, right?
Well, but see, the thing that's weird about this,
I'm saying it's a magic trick. I'm not saying that this is really what happened. I'm saying if I were doing it as a magic trick, that's how I would do it.
Are you aware that there's Malaysia 370 and then Malaysia, like, what is it? Yeah, 17. And they're remarkably, it's an oddly linked series of accidents, but this Flight 17, it was, people say, shot down over eastern Ukraine, and then the commander of the thing had a really weird last name, like Gherkin or something like that. It was similar to Nick Pickles. And it's like Malaysia Air 317, rotting bodies, Gherkin. Let's see if we can find this. Because they said that the bodies were decomposing when they when they found them. So it was like a plane crash with a bunch of dead bodies on it. And this sounds like Ukrainian shenanigans to me more than Putin. I thought Putin poisons everybody. There's actually sort of zero evidence that all of these people that they say Putin murdered were actually murdered by Putin. And the one time somebody asked him to his face about it, he said, well, you know, you've listed a series of allegations and you've named the people who have made those allegations, but show me the evidence that implicates Russia and we'll address that evidence. And the guy literally just says, okay, next question.
I get it. That's why we have to, we have to bring the evidence in order to do it. Let me show you another technique that's very effective in magic, right?
Did you know that about the rotting bodies on the passports?
I knew more about. No, I knew more about the MH370 because at the time MH370 crashed, I was operating a boat in the Gulf of Siam, and when we got the report from the guy on the oil rig in Vietnam, saying he thought he saw something fall from the sky, that's kind of what I latched into. So
here, Gherkin. There's Igor Gherkin.
Yeah. So. Yeah, well, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so I didn't follow that other Malaysian crash as much as I did the MH371 because it was nearby where I was living at the time. And I had a feeling, we had just completed an operation called Cobra Gold at the time. And they don't talk about that. Cobra Gold is this huge military exercise between the United States and Thailand. And Cobra Gold had just wrapped up when MH370 crashed. And I don't know.
Pro-Russian separatist Igor Gherkin has claimed corpses near the debris died days before the plane took off. According to rebel website Ruskaya Vesna, the leader was told by people at the scene in eastern Ukraine that a significant number of the bodies were drained of blood and reeked of decomposition. Now, when did this crash occur? 2014. It's interesting. Wagner first starts appearing in the news around 2012. See, I have a very strong suspicion, John, that the Wagner Group is a construct of the same people who came up with the PIS dossier and all of this nonsense against Trump. A globalist cabal of GCHQ, NSA, FBI, CIA, MI6, name the letters, but a cabal of morons who want to send money to Ukraine to create a war with Russia. I think they created Wagner. I think Andrew Weissman is involved. This whole series of prosecutions that were brought against Prigozhin, the Concord Catering Company, this weird, there's a anonymous LLC called Concord Consulting that got involved in the lawsuit. The whole thing just reeks of chicanery.
Yeah, I remember when you told me about this whole Concord catering thing and how Prigozhin had a catering company and that's how this all started. I was like stunned by that and that whole pathway of how he got from Concord Catering to Wagner Group.
Let's discuss it again for a second. Because at a young age, he was enrolled in a cross-country ski school where he was to become an Olympian. And that path under the Soviet Union was like celebrity. That was one of the only ways you could have a life free of the oppression of the Soviet Union. And to blow that kind of opportunity, I think we need some more information about that. But he becomes a criminal at a young age, goes to jail, gets a suspended sentence. Now, a person who I know in Russia, who grew up in Russia, said that's pretty normal that, this is a guy who's living in America but had lived in Russia, was born and grew up in Russia. He said Americans think that Russia is this terrible thing. It's like, actually, they give you a second chance if it's your first time getting arrested. So he got a suspended sentence, and then he gets arrested again for creating a gang of teenagers, and now he spends kind of more time in jail. When he gets out, he starts literally a hot dog stand in a food court in a shopping mall that he parlays into 5 premium restaurants. Now, that alone is so implausible to me. Maybe that would happen, but if you did that, if you overcame a life of teenage troublemaking to become a restaurateur and have success in the restaurant business, would the first thing that comes to your mind be, why don't I start an international military company, even though I have no military training or experience, and I'll go do that? Or would you say, why don't I open this restaurant in Paris or New York or Dubai, since I'm having such success in Moscow? So everything about this guy is completely implausible. And when you look at the shenanigans that went on with the incompetent criminal prosecution of Prigozhin and his alleged associates, by the way, he's also alleged to run this IRA, the Internet Research Agency, which was at the basically center of the Mueller investigation. This was the agency that allegedly interfered through internet memes or whatever the hell they were doing. But forgive me for monopolizing the last portion of the show here, John. We're going to have to make a break over to the sponsor exclusive segment. People are going to be able to join us in just 5 minutes on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and Subscribestar and Patreon/crowdsourcethetruth. We're going to talk about my phone call with a person I allege to be a traitor, Alexander Sasha Vindman. We've also got a lot to talk about, this big problem, how to hide it. So stay with us, everybody. Join us for the sponsor exclusive segment. We'll be right